So then a very warm welcome from my side. Hi, my name is Thomas Zahel. I am the head of innovation of PASIC-Sevi here at Körber Pharma in Austria, located in Vienna. And I have the pleasure today to bring you a very, very interesting topic in a webinar, predicting batch outcomes in real time using digital twins. And for that, we have prepared actually already one poll up front. And we would like to know from you and get you engaged, get you interactive already from the very first slide. So if I read that correctly, then 83% of you consider doing that. And 17% say maybe in future. So I believe you came to the right place, right? of this webinar where we can discuss how to do it and how to do it in future. Great. So I think everybody of you uses a digital twin every day, which is this one. It's Google Maps. It's a typical digital twin that fulfills all the requirements of a definition of a digital twin. It has a model of the real world, which is the map, and it is enabling you as a person to change your route in the real world, and it's guiding you through the real world. And we will want to do the very similar thing here for the biopharmaceutical or pharmaceutical industry. And of course, we need to see a little bit what are the challenges of the pharmaceutical industry. And for that, we always like to start with the product life cycle. And I guess every one of you is associated to either of those steps of the product life cycle, either from process development, tech transfer, process validation, or manufacturing. And each of you do have different challenges with a lot of experiments to be performed, long time to markets, scale up and scale differences, or variability of your yield and quality leading to out of specification results in manufacturing. And most of these, or some of these challenges, are actually emerging from the fact that we are still living in silos, indicated by these walls which are happening between these stages. And a digital twin should definitely be a knowledge vehicle that exchanges the knowledge, the models, the information about our process through all these stages of the life cycle, and doesn't only live in one of these stages. So with our tools, we want to make digital twins live from very left to very right, and even make them live in a life cycle, so cycling them back. And of course, these digital twins are built according to regulatory guidelines, good modeling practices, and we will discuss this today. So why actually do we need process digital twins? And again, I want to focus here that we are speaking about process digital twins, not about equipment or facility digital twins. So the reason is because believing that there is a constant input to our our facility, that we are controlling our process parameters always at the same level, and we will get the same output. This is a very ancient belief, because in reality, we all know that there is variability in our input material entering the facility. There is variability in how we run our processes, which of course leads to variability in our output. And this is not what we want, because this leads to high out of specification results, a low space time yield, and low reproducibility, and finally puts patients on risk. However, imagine there is a tool, a digital tool that shadows what's going on in your facility, enables us to control our process in a way to counteract those input variability and achieve a consistently high product quality and a consistently high product yield at the end, that leads to reduction of those OS results, increased space-time yield, reproducibility, and sustainability. Overall, we can, with these tools, decrease the cost of goods, and by this, really make our manufacturing processes more efficient and less cost-intensive. So this is the overall goal we have here. And for pharmaceutical processes, we all know that they are executed in sequence. So there are usually steps that are executed in sequence. We speak about upstream and downstream manufacturing steps for biopharmaceuticals. We speak about API, about fill and finish. So we have drug substance and drug product processes. And all these steps can be modeled with different tools. So you could start modeling those steps, for example, with simple linear regression models, which are established from process development, process characterization data, and manufacturing data. You could have linear mixed models that incorporate random effects, so lot-to-lot variabilities. You can have other steps that are modeled with mechanistic information, where you have physical information about your systems, like chromatography columns. Or you could use hybrid and AI models where you adjust and augment the known physics by black box models like AI models, like neural networks that compensate for lack of knowledge of mechanistic links. Of course, there are a variability and many different possibilities how to model individual steps, but an end-to-end process model combines all these steps together, and we are very unique in having a tool here that combines all these steps together. So the output of one unit operation is the input of the next unit operation, and we can concatenate those models in silico using a Monte Carlo simulation. And we do this because there's only one real point in our manufacturing process that really matters, and this is the final product, drug substance or drug product quality we need to achieve. This is where we need to be within specification, where we need to be at our target condition. And it's not a intermediate product we sell. And for that, we need an end-to-end process model. It's nothing wrong with just modeling one unit operation, but it's just not telling us the full picture. It's not telling us how the process parameter of this specific step will impact final product quality. What do we have? This is not a new idea. It was actually my idea back then in my PhD thesis 2017, and I'm super proud that this technology still emerged and emerged and emerged. So we published this integrated process modeling first in 2017 with Boehringer Ingelheim together on a case study where they also filed this product with this technology. Then we are having different case studies here with vaccine developers, for example. We have shown how these end-to-end process models also help by reaching quality by design milestones. We have shown how with some of our clients, how we move towards real-time applications like digital twins, how to derive specification-driven acceptance criteria, even how to save up to 70% of your experiments conducted in process development and process characterization. And we have employed this technology of end-to-end modeling in over 20 commercializations, so 20 CDT filings as end-to-end digital shadows. And all these use cases are open access. Most of them are open access. And they all show how this tool can really be applied to real industrial use cases. Even last year in the ISPE conference in Dublin, Peter Marks, the head of FDA CBER, pulled out a presentation of my PhD thesis and presented a slide of this. So also regulatory agencies are well aware of this technology. And we are now at the stage where we want to transform these digital shadows, which are mimicking what's going on into a facility, into a real digital twin as a no-click recommender system. And we will see what that means in a second. First of all, how does such an end-to-end model really look in practice? And for this, we want to switch quickly in our software, which is called PASIC Sevi. So here you see the software, which is a software as a service, a web-based tool. And you see a dashboard of an end-to-end process model. Here in offline mode, we will see it in a second in real-time mode, but here it's in offline mode, where you see a typical biopharmaceutical manufacturing process with 4 unit operations. It's very simplified, but still illustrative, starting at the fermentation, a harvest step, a capture step, and a polish step. And each of these steps has a set of process parameters, critical process parameters. And all of these process parameters have a set point indicated by the peak of the distribution and a uncertainty, a variability, which could be your equipment capability, for example. What you see down here is the prediction of this end-to-end model. So you have here 2 outputs. Of course, you could have 10, 20 outputs or whatsoever, but for this minimal example, we have 2 outputs here. So one output is the aggregates, a very typical quality attribute you track over the manufacturing process of biopharmaceuticals. And you here see the different unit operations on the x-axis, ranging from fermentation down the way to polish. And what you see is the markers indicate the real values measured in manufacturing and process development runs, and the distribution you see here is the uncertainty distribution of the end-to-end process model at every step. And most interestingly is, of course, the distribution we achieve in terms of quality and product demand at the end of our process. So here we have our gray dashed line. This is the drug substance specification of 31%. And we see that a couple of the runs we simulate with this end-to-end model, like 1.2% are outside the specification limit. What I can do now with this end-to-end model, I can now change any of the process parameters I see here and investigate their impact towards the final product quality. For this, we have built, as I said before, models for each individual unit operation, which could be statistical models, mechanistic model, AI, or hybrid models, and concatenated them in a Monte Carlo simulation. What I can do now is I can change any of these process parameters. I now pick the seeding density and put it to the highest value and press apply. What now happens, I run 10,000 Monte Carlo simulations, and I'm not only able to predict how the product quality at the fermentation step will change, which will be a more or less kept an obvious change, but also how this change propagates to the final drug substance quality we receive. This is the quality we will later inject into patients. And we see this was not quite a good change, because now 4.2% of our future runs will be outside the specification limit. So you really want to maybe change it in a different direction where you receive a way lower out of specification probability. You can do a tremendous amount of application with this tool. You can use it for offline use cases during your process development, your filing process, where you define your control strategy or even optimize the process in respect to all the process parameters, or you can use it for real-time applications. We always get two questions at this point. The one question is, how many runs do you need to train such a model? The second question is, how do you validate such a model? Very briefly talking about the first point, how many runs do you need? It depends. It depends, of course, on the individual models, how complex they are. If you want to have models that are predicting the quality and yield as a function of many, many process parameters, then you also need a lot of data to train those. If you only need simple models, you only need a few experiments to train. All of the use cases we published, the real use cases with our industry partners like Boehringer Ingelheim, we published, have been built on data that is no more than they always do for process characterization. So it's not more data you need, it's just combining this data together in an end-to-end process model. The second question we always get is how to validate it. How do I gain trust in my model? How do I get trust in? How do you trust my model? Or why should a regulatory agency trust in my model? And I want to explain a very basic concept of gaining trust in models with a model also you use probably every day, and it is a weather model. It's a weather forecast. This weather forecast tells you it will be rainy or sunny, or which temperature we'll get every day. But there is essential information that's missing, I haven't shown here in this slide, and I guess you have already spotted it, and that is the probability or predictability that such an event will happen. And as in every usual weather forecast, the predictability goes down the way the longer we look into future. But the predictability or probability that a certain event will happen has a huge benefit, because we can make what is called risk-based decisions. If there is only a 5% probability of rain, I'll probably not take an umbrella with me. If there is a 95% probability of rain, I probably will take an umbrella with me. And a second big advantage is that we can use this uncertainty quantification to validate if a model is sufficient for a certain context of use. Let me give you an example. If you go out for a run, you don't care if you have a very poor weather model and you have a very unpredictable weather model if it will rain or not, because you anyway say, I will get wet anyway, I'll sweat anyway. Whereas if you're in a high-risk situation, maybe you plan your wedding for tomorrow, then you want to have a highly predictive weather model because you really don't want to get wet at all. So you see, depending on the context of use, we would like to have a more predictable or less predictable model, including its uncertainty. And of course, we have thought about this in also another publication we did here with some people from Sanofi using an ISP group, and we have assessed and proposed here to use the ASME VNV40 standard that has also been referenced a couple of times by FDA to verify and validate computational models. And without going into every detail, I want to share here the basic workflow of the VNV40 activities for verification and validation. And it starts with having a question of interest and a context of use. So the context of use could be, I want to apply the model for a real-time control and advanced decision-making during the execution of a batch. Then you need to assess the model risk. Is there still a human in the loop? Stuff like that. Then you set up credibility goals in terms of verification. So how accurate does my model need to represent the mathematical equation, but numerical solver verification, but also how which credibility goals do you have in terms of validation? So how well does it need to represent my real world? So you can assess this, for example, a very frequently used method is to split your data in training and test data sets, or a test data set should be representative and challenging for the model, and you assess how well the model can predict test data set. And finally, you execute these VNV40 plans to come up with a decision if the model is credible for a certain context of use. And here I want to highlight two aspects. And first one is never start modeling without knowing how good the model needs to be. Every model is wrong. Some are useful, right? We know this statement from George Box. All our models are wrong. Some are useful. And we need to understand how wrong our models are. And we need to be able to say the model is not too much wrong compared to how good it needs to be. And this is the essence, because we can never have a 100% quantum mechanics model of everything we do here, right? And the second part is how good does the model work for a certain, how applicable is the model for a certain context of use. And for that, we have been involved in many regulatory discussions, and we have been invited twice to the EMA Quality Innovation Group meeting this year, where now the EMA put out a consideration paper. It's still preliminary, but it will get final soon, hopefully, regarding pharmaceutical process model validation. You can read it. It's a very good paper. And here they also emphasize that model validation should include model uncertainty estimation, considering major sources of the uncertainty. For example, this can be done by using tolerance intervals, as we have implemented that in our tool as well. All right, so how can, if we followed now this VNV40 guideline and we did all the steps and we gained sufficient credibility in our model, how does such a model now perform in real time? And this is here a video on how the same end-to-end model I've just shown you to before in an offline mode can perform in a real-time mode. And here you see that we're running a batch in real time, indicated by the red record sign. And now in the first unit operation, someone makes a mistake. He's chosen the wrong seeding density. It's a deviation from the target condition. And now this end-to-end model can give you a warning, and it will tell you, like Google Maps, if you continue executing the process as planned, you have a 6% chance of being outside specification. And maybe that's higher than a threshold you want to reach. Maybe it's higher than 5%. And very similar to Google Maps, it gives you also a recommendation how to tune the rest of the process in order. So you would need to change these 3 process parameters in the direction shown in order to decrease the chance of an out of specification in terms of quality and product amount. And here you can either apply or decline that recommendation. If you apply it, it will be automatically sent to the MES system, and the operators can execute the residual steps according to the recommendation. So this is the final digital twin that receives data, makes a recommendation, and also sends the recommendation back to an execution system where this can be followed. For this, of course, we need a life cycle. We need usually have 2 phases, right? We build a model and we apply a model. For building a model, we use manufacturing data as well as process characterization data. Both of them have different quality. You know, manufacturing data usually is executed at target conditions, and we have small variability in the process parameters, but we know a lot about how the error propagation and the propagation of purities and impurities along the process will happen. Whereas in process characterization data and process validation data, we have purposeful variation in our process parameters that allow us to make the correlation between process parameters and quality attributes. Once a model is built, we need to validate it, for example, using the VNV40 guideline I've just shown, and finally apply it for offline or real-time contexts. If you go for real-time context, as I said, we need interfaces to maybe SCADA systems where we receive data from middleware that has already some structured or harmonized data layers, and also the MES system where later the changes we propose are documented. And there's also a life cycle back when it comes, for example, to a model update. So, for example, we also discussed this with Ima in these collaboration group meetings quite heavily. For example, a good idea would be to trend the residuals of the model. So how well, what's the difference between the model prediction and the observation? And if the residuals of our model, so the error of our model is similar to the error we know from our training, then everything is okay. But if the residuals, the error of our model increases over time, it should trigger a model update. And here you can do the same thing as you do for your continued process verification. You can make trending charts of your residuals and use your Western electric rules to trigger a model update. Going more deeply into the architecture of such a life cycle management, then we can think about two stages, about offline stages where we build a model and real-time stages where we apply a model. Of course, this needs different modules. So you need offline data to be aggregated and contextualized in a database. You need to build the individual models, statistical, mechanistic, hybrid AI type of models. In, for example, the PASIX-heavy model builder, you need to concatenate those models together. So the output of one model will be the input of the next model, of the next step, to finally have a model that can be pushed to a model database. A model database that could be a Git repository, as it's in our case. And from there, the model can be versioned, is clearly version controlled model that can be pulled into model runtime in real-time context, where it will be fed with real-time data from maybe SCADA systems, yeah. And the model makes a prediction and then might need a user decision like say yes or no, or maybe this is even a closed loop where a user decision is not needed. And we feed back this prediction of the recommendation as a real-time recommendation into the MES system. And then the loop runs as long as the process runs. By the way, all these models I've shown you today, they run for fed batch, batch, and continuous processes, of course. Okay, and there are also sometimes AI components to it when we want to model individual unit operations with, for example, hybrid models. So I want to conclude here a little bit, and I've shown you today end-to-end digital twins that can speed up the time to market. So it brings benefits for the process development, process characterization world, but also productivity in terms of yield increase and quality increase during manufacturing. For this, we need a kind of digital twin factory where we build and manage those models. And this digital twin factory is connected in real time to all our manufacturing devices and all the steps of our manufacturing process. So it's end-to-end in the sense of the process steps we can connect together, but it's also end-to-end in the sense of the life cycle steps we can connect together. And each stakeholder, so wherever you're from, will get benefits from that digital twin factory, as we have shown in the case studies we have published with our clients on this. So for example, we have published how to save 70% of your process development experiments with such end-to-end digital twins, how to set up a holistic control strategy and by this increase process robustness and increase clinical success. We have shown how you can reduce the failure rate in tech transfer and scale up, and most importantly, how to consistently generate value with these end-to-end models by increasing yield and quality in a real-time context as a digital twin. With this, I want to thank you, and I will really open the question answer, really discuss the next steps together. I'm also open to receive an email later or do a one-to-one with you, but maybe there are already questions we can discuss right now. I will just open the
Yeah, or
Q.
I can also
Okay.
share the questions. We
Yes,
got
yes.
one already asking, have you already implemented a digital twin for a pharma company?
So yes, we are at the moment doing this for as I said in real time. This is of course a very novel. It's very innovative, and we're doing this for two pilot clients. So we are having already digital shadows running. So in real time, information is incorporated in such a digital shadow, and it's giving you recommendations, but there is no real feedback loop back to the manufacturing process. And we're doing the first digital twin now for two pilot clients where also information is automatically fed back into the MES system.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. We have another one. First of all, thank you very much for the webinar, it says. And can you tell us something about the effort and time frame you usually have for the introduction of digital twins?
It's a very, very good question. So, and also it depends, of course. The answer is it depends. It always depends on a couple of aspects, right? But usually the modeling is not the rate limiting step here, right? So it's about having the data contextualized, having data in a contextualized form to build such a model. Yeah, and here the time of experiments, the time of compiling this data in a contextualized form is usually the limiting factor. All the use cases we have presented are based on process characterization studies. They usually range from 6 months to a year to build such a end-to-end model. And then later, of course, it's a engineering work to make the interfaces to your MES, to the SCADA systems, which takes you another 6 months, I would say, roughly, depending, of course, on the process complexity, on your IT infrastructure and stuff like this. So I would say overall, from scratch to a final digital twin, you would definitely need to think about a couple of years activity. However, modeling is not the rate limiting step here. And it's rather about doing the experiments you need. It's rather about building the connections, talking to IT, making sure the firewall is open, and stuff like that.